I am so conservative.
Rationalized in my head. These are things I read.
And I'm going to talk about Willow Creek.
Okay.
Willow Creek, a few years back, had invited...
remembered at the time when Will Rogers said, I don't belong to any organized religion. I'm a Baptist.
Yeah. I am so conservative. If he didn't jump to conclusions, he might not get any exercise. I am so conservative. And welcome to the Unknown Webcast. Today is February 1, 2022, and this is broadcast number 276. This is just a bigot of a trigger warning. A bigot. I did it again.
You did it again.
This is just a bit of a trigger warning for those who believe words are more injurious than sticks and stones. I really am so conservative. I can't turn left even when I'm driving. Maybe it is a bigot warning. In addition to giving trigger warnings to our viewers, Ron Hensel and I both drink coffee for your protection. Today, Carl Teichrib and Steve Matthews joins us to talk about the draw and attraction of Burning Man. My name is Don Vino. I'm president of Midwest Christian Outreach, Inc. in Wonder Lake, Illinois, which produces the Unknown Webcast, and our senior researcher is the inimitable Ron Hensel, who will introduce the sponsors of today's webcast. And here is Ronnie, baby.
The inimitable and inedible Ron Hensel. You know, what's today? Today is the day before the day.
The day before the day.
Tomorrow, the palm trees will come out. They'll see their shadows. And we'll have another 12 months of summer down here in Florida. Well, greetings from sunny Florida, where that all happened a year ago. It's going to happen again tomorrow. Our sponsor for this edition of the Unknown Webcast is the Coexist Boutique. For when you care enough to take your hands off your loved ones' throats long enough to pick out the perfect gift, the Coexist Boutique. Our regular legal disclaimer, our guests on today's webcast, insert names here, that would be Carl and Steve, have no connection whatsoever to any of the satirical content on the Unknown Webcast, hereafter known as the webcast, although we will probably not mention it again. This satirical content includes any and all commercials, end credits, puns, smart remarks, notes of bigotry, or anything else that might fall under the definition of satire. In the meantime, Midwest Christian Outreach Inc. bears no responsibility for anyone's opinions regarding the satirical content. Notice the opinions expressed on this webcast are ours and should be yours too. If you enjoyed this webcast or it really annoys you and you want to inflict it on someone else to ensure your continued access, please go to midwestoutreach.org, click the yellow donate button, and contribute as you feel led. Don't worry, this webcast is Y2K compliant, and don't forget to subscribe to us on your favorite video channels. Greetings, Carl and Steve. Hey, four images. I like the way it's all arranged there. You know, wouldn't it be cool if my hand went over here and it went into Steve's face? Right?
That would be.
Or I could like tap Carl on the shoulder or pick Don's nose, you know, right up here. So.
Well, and that reminds me, just a reminder, you can pick your friends and you can pick your nose, but you can't pick your friend's nose, Ron.
Yeah, that's true. So now we know that the Brady Bunch was a Zoom call the whole time. We have the evidence right in front of our eyes. So
that's proof positive. So here we go, and we have, if you notice, I have a little Burning Man picture in the background there, an iconic Burning Man picture. Pardon?
It's a little man burning. It looks like more of an effigy of a man. Unless
yeah, well, it's not Bernie Sanders, it's Burning Man, but not Bernie Sanders. So they're
feeling the burn.
Yeah, feeling the burn. So now that we kind of got all of the serious stuff out of the way, uh, not everyone has heard of Burning Man. Probably, I mean, there may be a few on the planet that don't have any idea what we're talking about. Uh, for those who don't know, or for those who have heard of it but are unsure what it is, uh, one of you two fine young gentlemen, Carl or Steve, if we go in alphabetical order, on the first name it would be Carl. On the last name it would be Steve. So let's toss a coin.
We took a
Who
vote.
wants to?
I'll grab it.
We took a vote and we voted for whoever wasn't named Steve could go first.
Well, Ron, you and I go to the same barber, so. And,
all right, Steve, go for it.
So, Burning Man, I'm so glad we're getting a chance to do this because, in our culture, we deal with apologetics. The church has got to know what's really going on. I often tell people it's not just about Mormons and Jehovah's Witnesses anymore. There's a whole new breed of movements and organizations. The Witnesses, a lot of people think are declining. They've hardly had any growth in the last 20 years thanks to the internet and some of the scandals that are going on. But young people, I say, like 21-year-old kids are not rushing out and joining Jehovah's Witnesses en masse at this point. They're doing things like Burning Man.
They're running away en masse, but they're not.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But they're running to things like Burning Man and some of these transformational festivals, The Secret, a lot of this own do-it-yourself spirituality. And, Burning Man is something that's really, really hard to describe if you haven't been there. It's something otherworldly, a whole different kind of experience. I'm going to start off by describing it this way in an article I wrote, where I said Burning Man is an annual week-long festival where people from all over the world go to build a temporary city in a harsh desert environment in order to participate and create and experience art, community, and spirituality, all with radical self-expression and without judgment. Now, that's a lot there. We're going to look at a bit today on art, community, and spirituality. It's part of Burning Man.
I think they're also a prototypical Martian community. I think when Elon Musk
it's a lot of things.
He's going to base it on Burning Man. It's the only thing is nothing will burn on Mars because the atmosphere is carbon dioxide.
Let me direct a question. I don't know, Steve, if you've been to a Parliament of World Religions, but Carl, what is the difference between, say, Burning Man and the Parliament of World Religions?
Good question. The Parliament of World Religions is more official in its environment, so people are coming as official representatives of different faith groups. It does have a similar feel in that it's like a carnival, in that you have this incredible interaction with people from so many different walks of life, who are coming to have an experience. And at the Parliament, your experience is it comes about through your interaction with other faiths, as you're learning about other faiths, as you're going to workshops, going to the different ceremonies, that type of thing. Burning Man, likewise, except of course it's a different flavor, it's a different element.
Would you say the key difference between the Parliament and the experience is there's no public nudity at the Parliament?
There's no public nudity at the Parliament.
And they have electricity.
And yes, right. Okay. And there's no dust. But it's interesting because I've been to a couple of the parliaments now, and there's an emphasis on art, and there's an emphasis on the experience of it. This experience, this feeling that you're going to achieve. And at the Burning Man, there's a strong and overwhelming presence of art and the experience of that interaction, the interaction of the people around you. The art itself becomes a vehicle to change worldviews and to engage in a type of psychological transformation. Both events are psychologically mind blowers because of the sheer size, because the Parliament is big. Burning Man is psychologically a bombshell in so many ways because of the desert environment you find yourself in, the types of people you're interacting with, the forms of art, the structure of the city itself. It is an overwhelming encounter, and it's meant to be.
So when you say the structure of the city, and this may be, we'll go to Steve, it's a city that doesn't really exist prior to the Burning Man, and then it sort of sprouts up in the middle of the desert.
Yeah, so a week before, Labor Day, out in Washoe County in northeastern Nevada, about 100 miles from Reno, there's nothing there at all in the Black Rock Desert. It's a sulfuric lake bed, and then all of a sudden, it's one of the flattest. It's probably the flattest place in the USA. They say it's really big. I mean, you can blindfold yourself and drive your car at 100 miles an hour, not hit anything for like 20 minutes. It's crazy. So you're out there in the
Chicago that do that.
So you're out there. So this temporary city is erected like a giant horseshoe. It's this futuristic city, dead center in the middle of the city. They have this giant wooden effigy, like about a 40-foot man they construct on a 40-foot base. And when you're out there, you're camping out there in a real survivalist kind of way. There's no electricity, no running water, no cell phones, no internet. You're cut off from your loved ones, your family, your job. You're there to create a whole new reality. They call it being in a petri dish or a blank canvas. So you're out there to kind of just create things according to Burning Man's 10 principles. And, it's become a very spiritual experience in the last few years. It's got a mix of New Age and paganism, capital P paganism, not like Wicca, but paganism, the broader spirituality. It's important today we offer in the show a balanced view, because so often there's kind of two polar extremes where people like cheerleaders saying how great Burning Man is the greatest thing in the world. There is nothing like it. You won't see art like it anywhere else. But there's definitely a dark underbelly and a dark spirituality of Burning Man culture that arises that transforms, like Carl said, people's worldview. And it kind of transforms you in two ways. One is the new guy who goes there, he kind of has a transformative view. And then people go there already a burner, they call them burners. And then you kind of look for an enlightened spirituality over there on the playa. The playa is the lake bed where they hold it.
So I think I just assumed that this, like the way it suddenly appears and then suddenly goes away, is designed to be a metaphor, particularly of the Chicago Cubs World Series. It was suddenly here,
the curse,
and then it was gone. Okay,
kind of like the man himself. He disappears. I mean, in the temple, Burning Man on Saturday night. The big point on Saturday night, it's a big party where they burn this wooden man, this effigy, and then there's 80,000 people running around naked and partying and drunk and screaming. And then the next night's a very, very contrasted, different view, because since 2000 now, Burning Man started 86, they have this spiritual temple they created. It's the spiritual heart of Burning Man. In this temple, it's an instrument of healing. We can get into that later. They have a different kind of temple theme every year. But in this temple, you'll have 80,000 people the next night in total silence, not so much as a cough. And these people are all crying and kind of releasing pain in front of this temple in this spiritual kind of thing. So yeah, Burning Man is a wild party and drugs, sex and drugs and rock and roll. But in the other sense, there's definitely that spiritual side, which we're also here to address. There's a lot of immorality too.
Do I understand correctly? Is the statement they're making by showing up and then not leaving a trace, are they trying to say the environment is more important than humanity?
I think what they're trying to say ultimately is we want our BLM-based permit for next year. And actually,
but they've been doing it since '86. They've been doing it this way.
Right.
Yeah. Well, it came out of the Suicide Club and the Cacophony Society in San Francisco, and that was one of the beliefs of the Suicide Club is leave no trace. So they were an exploratory group, and they'd always say leave no trace. So that's one of the big 10 principles of a Burning Man today. That's continued through that.
Why did that suicide thing have that whatever it was? Why did
I definitely don't want to monopolize Mike, but I'll answer the history because I've done a lot on this. So Burning Man kind of came out of, in San Francisco, a group called the Suicide Club, which later became the Cacophony Club. And there's a lot of the same people involved. So they were out there as an explorer group. They used to do crazy things. They used to do this formal feast on the San Francisco Golden Gate Bridge where they'd walk out in tuxedos and evening dresses, do a dinner, or they'd all dress like Santa Claus or clowns on a bus. I mean, they have a long, interesting kind of hippie countercultural thing. They go to face. They had a thing called the Billboard Liberation Front, where they'd climb up on billboards to face the billboard and kind of put an anti-capitalist kind of thing on that billboard to kind of show that message. So Burning Man started in 86, but in 88, the Cacophony Club showed up. So then many of the burners became cacophonists, and many of the cacophonists became burners. It was kind of like a marriage like that. And that kind of thinking of exploration, counterculture, all that stuff that was part of the DNA of the Suicide Club and Cacophony Club Cacophony Society all became part of Burning Man, and it's still
But
there today.
Burning Man existed 2 years though before the Cacophony Suicide people joined it.
Correct.
So,
Right.
and they were already doing
Well, Suicide was back in 73, and it
But it
lasted
wasn't-
82, and then so a lot of people were kind of disbanded at that point. Then 86, the Cacophony Club started.
And then 2 years later, they joined Burning Man.
Well, they did in 88. Yeah.
And so Burning Man is already based on the idea for 2 years that you go there, you have this big thing you do, and then you leave and you don't leave a trace, right?
Well, it wasn't started that way. It started in 86 in San Francisco.
Right.
They moved it onto Playa in Nevada in 90 when they ran into the trouble on Baker Beach with the police. And that's when it really started to go wild, because you're far out from, society and the law enforcement. You could just basically burn things. And, they were riding around in cars 100 miles an hour, having sex, shooting guns out the window. It was just crazy, the stuff that went on in the first years, but then it became much more structured.
So initially it was like 25 or 35 people originally.
Wow.
It really started getting bigger when they moved to Nevada. Now, one of the things which Carl had mentioned, and maybe you want to pick up on that again, is the leave no trace may have something to do with the planet, but it really has more to do with, can we be here again next year, right, Carl?
Right. That is part of their federal permit. Like it is property managed by the Bureau of Land Management, the BLM, and part of their permitting procedure is they are audited to see how clean they leave that federal site, and their permit hinges to a large degree on how they have managed the location after everybody leaves. And so there are no garbage cans, there's no trash bins at Burning Man. You pack everything you pack in, you pack out. The only thing that you don't pack out is obviously they have porta potties set up for human waste. But other than that, yeah, you're taking out your own garbage. You're dealing with all of your own trash, and you're.
They call it MOOP.
That's right, MOOP, matter out of place, and you're supposed to take care of this yourself. That's interesting. Thank you, Steve, for bringing that up, because I have a piece of Burning Man toilet art, porta potty art. Porta potties can be converted into art pieces.
Hold that up again. Hold that up again.
So,
oh no!
I'll read it to you. I snagged it off the wall. And Jesus showed her MOOP, matter out of place, that was left in the porta potty, and said unto her, only excrement and toilet paper into the porta potties, for it pleases the Lord to not clog the cleaning equipment. Luke 23:14. So there's all this kind of messaging, and also a kind of sometimes it's playful, sometimes like this. In this case, it's blasphemous, where they try to bring that point across. So you go to all the toilets, and I mean, yeah, you're going to see all kinds.
There's a lot of irreverence on the playa. Yeah.
And irreverence even to their own culture as well, which is
absolutely
that's part of it.
So as I am listening, and as Carl and I have talked about this in the past, my pastor and I have talked about attending, but Carl knows my feelings. I don't really do well with camping with 80,000 of my closest friends, so I may never arrive.
Not even clothed ones, right?
yeah, exactly. But one of the big things is that we're talking about it is not everyone there is running around naked, but there's a percentage of them that are, and so. How do Christians fit into that? And my response is this: it isn't for all Christians or even most Christians, but it is probably closer to first century Rome, in which the church was born, in terms of a small group of believers living in a large group of pagan worshipers. Would that be an accurate description?
Yes, I believe it would be an accurate description. And the issue of nudity, in 2019, we had a young guy who joined our crew later on in the week, and I hadn't had a chance to really vet or talk to him beforehand, but he showed up, and so in about the space of 20 minutes, I had to kind of not grill him, but ask him some hard questions. And one of the things, I had to make a few points, and one of them, and this is important, I think, for anybody engaging in this kind of cross-cultural, because this really is cross-cultural.
Cross-cultural, right.
First of all, you have to know the difference between finding something offensive and being personally offended. If you can't get that sorted out, you're in a heap of trouble.
Right.
Secondly, there is nudity, and there is incredible sexuality and sensuality. That's a very, very open theme there. So you can't walk around going, my eyes, I don't see, I'm not seeing anything. No, you acknowledge she's beautiful, or he's, if you're a female part of our team, he's a hunk, he's great, he's looking, he's hot, or she's hot. You acknowledge it and walk away. Just keep going. One of the people who've intersected with our team a bit and was kind of part of our group a little bit in 2019, he described it this way: it's more nudity than what you're used to, but it's less than what you expect.
There you go.
Okay, that's interesting. That's interesting. So that's kind of the overall. Here's what it looks like: it's 80,000 people camping together in the middle of a desert. It's
survivalist.
Survivalist. I mean, you really are. You only have what you bring, essentially.
Yep. Nothing's for sale except for ice and coffee. So that's one of the big principles: decommodification. Nothing is sold, sponsored. They don't even. Burning Man's even by word of mouth. They don't even advertise.
Oh, so no concessions, but they have a water truck that comes on if you need water, right?
Nope, not water. You bring your own water. You have to shower. Absolutely. Yep. So it's only ice and coffee, and that's it.
Now, the other, just one quick clarification regarding that, and Steve, you're absolutely right. There is services available for, let's say, pumping out RVs. There are trucks that come around, and you can do that. But you're absolutely right. There's, in fact, they want you to cover up, and this used to be a big thing. It's far less now, but they wanted you to cover up, let's say, the budget rental brands on the side of your truck or something, that type of thing. And some people get really creative with it, and some people just don't care.
It's a gift economy. So basically, nothing's sold and everything is just like a gift. So they'll give like little memorial trinkets or art pieces. Just say your bicycle. The main way of getting around this huge playa, it's massive expanse with so many what they call theme camps and art installations. The way to get around is on a bicycle. So, if you just say blow a tire, someone in the gift economy might be, I'm patching tires or giving massages or haircuts or whatever you need. It's definitely all about gifting, having food. Now, there's a thing called, like we alluded, there's a definite lingo at Burning Man, a sparkle pony, as Carl knows, right? Is somebody who shows up unprepared, doesn't bring food or any supplies, and goes and mooches it off someone else at a camp. So that's kind of like a pejorative term. It's she's a sparkle pony. She's just here to leech it off. So so you have to come prepared, all your food. And that's the thing about Burning Man. It's amazing is because you're going out here where, it's like 100 and some degrees in the daytime. It can get really down to the 40s at night, cold out there as you're camping. Some people bring RVs, some people bring tents, so it can be pretty darn cold. And all your food tastes horrible. It's this sulfuric, like I'd wake up every morning with, blood coming out of my throat because of all that sulfuric dust. But you basically, you have to bring your food and it all tastes like this dust and it gets into your electronics and there's dust storms that get in your eyes. You wear goggles. And before COVID came along, we wear masks on the playa to keep that dust out.
When you wear goggles. When you first said sparkle pony, I envisioned a rainbow excreting unicorn. I've seen those a lot on, but
Ron, what you got in your coffee over there?
I have public spring water. My biggest question before I even would venture there would be, how far would I be? How quickly could I get back to civilization on a moment's notice? I don't know if I could.
They don't want to, kind of. That's the whole point.
But I could bring my vehicle. I have to drive to get there, right?
Right.
Well, yeah, there's airports, nearby. Some people fly into Reno, then basically rent a car to get out there. But I mean, it's a big investment to go to Burning Man. I mean, you're taking a week off work, you're missing family work. It costs thousands of dollars at the end of getting all your food.
That would mean nothing to me. Based on your description, all I'd want to know is how fast can I get out of here? how fast to the nearest real bathroom?
Exactly.
How fast to the nearest real food and air-conditioned lodgings? Seriously, that's a serious question. How far are you?
What would Reno be?
20 minutes?
100 miles.
100 miles away.
Oh,
yeah, 100 miles.
Oh, but I can go as fast as I want, or is there like a 70-mile-an-hour speed limit?
It's paved. There's a paved road. It's not a big road.
I'd have to drive. Probably a little over an hour away is what you're saying.
Right. So when you get on the playa, the first thing they say is "Welcome home." So they have this kind of cosmology of, basically we live right now in the default world, 51 weeks of the year. But when you go onto the playa and experience this overwhelming explosion of activity and art and community and spirituality, now you're home. So at Black Rock Desert, and they call it Black Rock City, this big horseshoe-like city, right? At night, everything just comes alive. There, you can't, you have to bring earplugs. There's music pounding 24 hours a day, and there's parties, and there's what they call vamp camp. They're up all night and sleep in the day, kind of like my son. So what they do is they go out there.
From what you're describing, it sounds weather is more conducive at night because it's not as hot. Right?
Yeah, but it's crazy party time, and then at night they have all these vehicles out there. You ride your bicycle, you put what they call L wire, electroluminescent wire, so you can dress up in like kind of neon green or pink, whatever. And then you see all these bicycles going around. It's very overwhelming. Your first time going on there, it's like Mardi Gras on steroids at adult Disneyland. And you're seeing all these lights and these giant constructed, they have like what they call art cars and mutant vehicles. You're not allowed to drive your car on the playa, but you can drive these art cars that are dressed up cars and these ginormous mutant vehicles. So they'd be like big buses or a vehicle shaped like dragons or octopuses that breathe fire or make crazy noise. And it's just a big, it's an overwhelming experience on your five senses being out there.
Yeah.
Overwhelming. Yeah. So it would be sensory overload for most.
Nothing like Cornerstone Festival, Jerry. Very tame by comparison.
Yeah, and Steve, when you brought up a good point. When you arrive at the city, first of all, usually there's a long lineup to get in. Like in 2018, Bob and myself, I think we waited in line for 8 or 9 hours. Massive dust storms coming through. But when you arrive, they say welcome home. You receive a brochure, usually this one is from 2018, and it tells you where to go if you're having a psychedelic meltdown, because they have Zendo tents set up for psychedelics if you're having a problem with your trip. On the other side, issues of consent. And it's one of the only places, or it is the only place I know, where they have a section on sexual assault and rape. What to do if you're raped.
It became let me interject real quick. So rape became such a big problem, what they call the Bureau of Erotic Discourse. They started handing out these little flyers because you're out here in the middle of the desert. It's kind of like in space, no one can hear you scream, right? That Alien movie. So you're out, if you go into what they call deep playa, you drive off on your bike far away from Black Rock City, and you can hear the music, see lights in distance. There's been a lot of rapes over there again and again. One of the girls in our camp was raped there, and she tried to take a picture. The guy grabbed her cell phone, but you basically go out there, and then the rape was such a problem. They try to keep it down for PR. They kind of started giving what Carl had there, like little rape thing, like what to do if raped. Not good.
How many revenge acts incidents have taken place? I wonder.
That's a good question, Ron. I don't know how we would. I mean, yeah, there's a lots of unfortunate, shady, and criminal activity.
There's no law.
What do you expect when you have like 80,000 people? A lot of them are stoned or drunk, all partying. It's like a giant rave party.
But there is law enforcement. A lot of people don't realize that there's actually a lot of law enforcement.
So would it be safe to say that fundamentally Judeo-Christian values and morality kind of stay outside of the park before you enter?
You're free to express it.
Yeah, I think part of it is the experience of transgressing norms. When you transgress norms, then transformation, so-called, can occur. So you transgress the norms that have held you back. You transgress the norms of your morality, of your social, cultural constructs. You transgress all those things in the hope that you can become or experience something more than what you are. By the way, that's really Genesis chapter 3.
It's removing barriers in your thinking, kind of like the transformational festival aspect. Like Carl just held that up. Another important thing they'll give you is called the What, Where, When guide. So the only two real things that Burning Man really publish is it's their website, and then they have all these guides that you get when you walk in. I got some of the older, first ones here, but you do that, and then it lists all the events and workshops that go on throughout Burning Man throughout the week. So it'll say at this camp over here or at center camp, we're doing something, at 4 o'clock on Wednesday afternoon. And that really is what we as Christians can use to really expose some of the darker aspects of Burning Man, because it actually documents things. So it'll be some weird orgies or occultic, seminars, or even, but it goes much more than that. It can be, like permaculture and conspiracy theory stuff. All kinds of these events or workshops and seminars happen throughout the week. And that's something, it really defines Burning Man culture.
Yeah, for myself, in terms of the research side, to me, it's a research marketplace, because I'll go to workshops on United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, to cryptocurrency, to foreign affairs, issues of foreign affairs, and the where, what, when guides are essential. The other thing to do is you have to walk around to find out also what's going on. So these are the workshops at one of the camps dealing on the future of psychedelics. By the way, the very people we're
going to come back to those in a moment, because one of the questions is, what if you're invited to a party that's there? How do you sort of prepare for that? And Ron
you have multiple worldviews, and there's etiquette, right? I mean, you want to have the right gift to present. When I get invited to a party, I like to bring something, right? A bottle of wine, something like that. So the question is, do you struggle with finding the right wine to bring to pagan goat sacrifices? Do you wonder what to wear to your neighbor's neo-Nazi parties? Do you get anxiety attacks when trying to find the right picket signs to share with your friends from Westboro Baptist Church? Well, now you can put an end to all the worries that come from trying to fit in with people on opposing sides of the culture wars, because you can find the perfect gift for any ideology at the Coexist Boutique. Yes, the Coexist Boutique. This week's special deal in honor of the 50th anniversary of Mao Zedong's Cultural Revolution was actually several years ago, but we're still celebrating it. Relive the days when university students subjected their professors to public shaming sessions in which they would break their eyeglasses and publicly rebuke them at great length for not exhibiting politically correct opinions and behaviors. Oh, wait, that's going on right now in the USA. Well, anyways, this week's special deal, Cultural Revolution eyewear, genuine smashed Chinese prescription lenses and frames, formerly owned by PhDs and university administrators dating back to 1966 to 1976, only 99 cents a pair at the Coexist Boutique. For when you care enough to take your hands, let's back up. For when you care enough to take your hands off your loved one's throats long enough to pick out the perfect gift, the Coexist Boutique. So people coexist a lot over there at Burning Man, don't they?
They do. So let me say something that I forgot to say earlier, just to show people how big this festival is. The founders of Google, let's talk about some of the people who go to this thing. The founders of Google picked their CEO because he's a burner. The first Google Doodle ever, those little art things sometimes said the word Google, you see, was Burning Man. Jeff Bezos, who started Amazon, burner. Elon Musk, burner. The guys who started Facebook, Dustin Moskovitz and Mark Zuckerberg, burners. So this is the billionaire club.
Did Willow Creek pick their new pastor because he was a burner? I forget.
No, I don't think so. It's not even the same culture. But then you have all the rock stars and the movie stars like the Will Smiths and the Katy Perry and Perry Farrell, who started the Lollapalooza festivals. Sting, Robin Williams used to go. I mean, it's a long list of A-list celebrities and cultural leaders. So this thing is definitely something to be reckoned with, because it does shape our culture. And it's that element of free expression, radical, self-expression without any judgment, this kind of new age paganism that comes through it, and this is the stuff we should be concerned about as believers.
Yeah, we should be. And Carl was raising something about the workshops he's going to. I'd like to touch on that, because as he and I have discussed this over the phone and email over the last couple of years, he has continued to impress the idea on my thinking that it isn't just a festival where people tune in and drop out. This is not only transformational spiritually, but they're experimenting with a lot of things that are now impacting our cultures and society. Carl?
Correct. Yes. So a lot of the workshops I go to and have gone to, especially like some of these, have really they're the leaders at the forefront of the movement towards legalizing marijuana, legalizing psychedelics. That's a big part of it. And yes, when you're talking about those people who are influential, I mean, in 2019, I sat for 2 hours, had a conversation with the European Union's liaison officer to the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. That's the kind of people you end up rubbing shoulders with. In 2019, we had, I think, 52 U.S. mayors with the U.S. Conference of Mayors touring the city to learn lessons to take back to their home communities. We had congressmen in 2019. We had that also in years previous. In 19, we had the former chief economist for the World Bank there to try to understand how they could integrate Burning Man into a new city-based project that the World Bank is interested in pursuing. So it goes beyond just simply this is coming for a party. It is also coming to learn, to network, to kind of start to navigate how we can move forward with people who have similar interests and ideals.
And let me just say on that. So Burning Man now has become a nonprofit organization around 2013 or so. Now it's changed its name to the Burning Man Project. And the whole view is we want to take the principles that happen, the 10 principles, like their 10 commandments that happen on the playa during that week worldwide. So they're looking at Burning Man is a blueprint for a utopic world where they want to take Burning Man culture and the 10 principles that happen for that week long on the playa at Black Rock City to take it worldwide back to the communities when people go back home. So they have things called Burning Man since 2011 has sold out really quick. And it's much bigger than the 80,000 people who go there who could go there. So they have these regional burns around, in all 5 continents, or well, 5 out of 6, right? So they have those and decompression events and other Burning Man events. But the point now is this worldview, this transformational worldview, is being taken off the playa everywhere. And Burning Man is what you would call a transformational festival. It's one of many. I know, Carl, you've done a lot of work on transformational festival. Maybe you can define what that is for us so we'll understand. Because Burning Man is definitely one of many of these.
Yeah, and you're right, Steve. There's a lot of these events around the world that are considered to be transformational, and that's the whole goal. That's the purpose, that they have an experience, and none of them are identical. They all have their own unique quirks, their own kind of their own flavors.
Spirituality.
Do they all last the same duration?
It could be 3 days, 4 days, a week, 2 weeks usually at the
they're outdoors.
I can see how it has to be pretty easy to have several of these in Australia. Look at how huge their desert area is.
And there are a few in Australia, Ron.
Okay,
yep.
So
except if you're locked down and you can't leave your house, then you can't really have a festival.
Well, you're outdoors, so. But there's hundreds of them, right, Carl? I mean, across Western U.S., Western Canada, South America. There's so many of these festivals.
How long does the Burning Man last?
Burning Man lasts for 8 days.
8 days. So here's my thought is. They're trying. This is transformational, but I don't see anything sustainable here.
Good point, Ron. I had a conversation with a young esoteric artist, and he was really troubled by some of the things he saw. We ended up having a really good conversation comparing and contrasting Christianity with his worldview, using the approach of oneism versus otherness or twoism. And he actually was the one who said, this is temporary, so temporary we burn it at the end. Yeah,
it's like you have an expiration date built right in, so you don't have to see it fail.
Yeah,
but you're going to take it off the playa because when you go back into the default world, you want to take a bit of Burning Man and then introduce that philosophy out there. Right. So they're kind of evangelists, especially now the Burning Man Project.
As if none of these ideas have ever been tried anywhere.
Exactly.
This is like a brand new thing. I haven't heard anything new here. I've not heard anything new that hasn't been tried repeatedly in utopian communities, in experimental cultures. I haven't heard it.
Yep. That's right. The only thing that may be new in terms of its reach is it's beginning to be more culturally accepted. It really is kind of the melting pot for especially the tech side. So for an example, I've never seen in the Smithsonian Museum an entire gallery dedicated to, let's say, Jehovah's Witnesses. But in 2017 or 18, maybe it was 18, Smithsonian dedicated their entire Renwick building to Burning Man, and then Cincinnati Art Museum dedicated. It's, all of a sudden it becomes a culturally accepted phenomena. But you're right, there is nothing new under the sun
it's
here.
It's a fantasy.
Yeah.
It's a perennial utopian fantasy.
Yeah, it is.
And it's never going to happen.
But it's impacting a lot of lives.
Yeah, it is.
Like, where we used to worry only about Jehovah's Witness and Mormon and stuff. Now, a lot of people are being shaped through this kind of worldview, and that's what, we've got to be able to respond to.
It's deluding a lot of people. So I think one way I would, if I were talking to somebody, I will say, have you ever heard of the Oneida community? Have you ever heard of, and I'd start rattling off
Shakers is another.
All these utopian ideas, some of which had, very, very experimental and ahead of its time, so to speak, approaches to sexuality.
But this is the big difference here. The big difference here is that Burning Man, they don't even like to call it a festival, because festival kind of implies even though we call it a transformational festival, it implies a curated, designed experience. All these workshops that I kind of mentioned, all these seminars, all these art, installations, it's all the vehicles, they're all initiated by, the participants. Burning Man, they say there's no spectators, there's only participants. You're going to be an artist for a week, you're going to create. It applies you that canvas that you can go there, and that space we can go there and create that. So nothing is really created by the Burning Man organization. They just create the space, the infrastructure.
You've just described a curated, designed experience.
Yeah.
Well, they just create the space, and then the participants do this stuff.
It sounds to me like the gasoline of the event is unbridled idealism.
Well, it's more complicated. There's different people go for different reasons.
Okay.
So some people
it would be an idealistic reason of some kind, right?
Right. But some academics have said they go there as a kind of blow-off valve because they're kind of trapped into a cubicle. These technical pagans.
But we're still back to what is the driving force? It is some unbridled idealism in a lot of different areas. So
there's multiple reasons.
Academics and
some people go there to be an artist for a week.
But what's the driving? What drives the whole? What drives the train?
I'll explain that. So some people go there for the party experience. Some people want that blow-off valve experience to get away from it all and to kind of be party and go crazy for a week. Some people truly believe in the mission of the 10 principles. So they're not there for partying. They're not there for any of that.
You're missing what I said.
Yeah.
Because idealism is undefined. It is just an emotive, the driving force, and it can be vented in a lot of different directions. It could be a Jehovah's Witness. Idealism is the planet Earth is going to be the millennial kingdom, right?
Well, Don, if I could, the way I would explain it,
you can't. It's my turn.
Idealism is the train.
Different angle, same idea.
And people get on the train for different reasons, but the train is idealism.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
I think there's a personal side that's important to note regarding even personal idealism. So this is these are surveys that I did at one transformational festival. It was a Burning Man regional event in Alberta, and I've done this now a couple of times where I go and they're worldview surveys, and along the way you find out, okay, like, why are you here? Why are you personally here? And I've listed some of this in my book. This is just what I've pulled from this one survey.
Which book, Carl?
My book, Game of Gods.
Free plug.
Yeah. Thank you. Hey, thank you, Steve.
Available on Amazon.
Box below.
Very cool. But yeah, so here we go. When I asked in 2017 why they were attending, again, these are personal responses. Friends and connection, to give and receive joy, fun and meet people, exploration, curiosity, art and visual pleasures, try and forget about the world, collective participation, to love myself, connection, expression, broaden my horizons, add to the party, socializing, introspection, finding unique experiences, open my mind, relax, to love and be loved. One of the ladies that I surveyed, and her tent was just right close to my tent. When I asked her what her religious identity was, it was brokenhearted. So, in all the academic talk that we can build around this experience, the bottom line, we're seeing people looking for something. We're seeing people hungry for something, and that's so important. So important to keep in mind.
It is important. So, again, as we started in the very beginning, we're not going to be able to cover every aspect of this. We want to just give an overview and maybe revisit this again as the event perhaps comes closer. So let's turn the corner a bit and say, when you go there, you have a unique, and Steve is involved with this, I believe, as well, a unique setup in your particular camp. What is that?
We set up a sign at our camp, says Camp of the Unknown God, which is built off of Acts 17. And that sign itself and the name of our camp itself becomes a vehicle to begin having conversations for Jesus Christ. Because people will ask, where does that name come from? We've had people walk by, just simply blur it out. And it's not a big sign, guys. It's just a small sign. And they'll blur it out.
It's not neon or anything?
Well, it is lit up for night, but it's not it's not one of those things that just is spectacular the way everything else is there. And that's okay, because we're just there to meet people for who they are. And so people will walk by and blurt out, who is this unknown God? And we'll end up having conversations. 2017, it was my friend Bob Worley and myself, our first attempt to see, is there a place for this? Is there a model here that we can work with? Because if we are entering a pagan age, and I firmly believe we are, there has to be an early church model for us to begin to work with. Right. And Paul expresses that. He demonstrates that by going to Athens, recognizing the spiritual condition of the city, engaging with the trendsetters, the philosophers, the thinkers, even being taken to their council to be judged with a backdrop of pagan temples all behind him, and then being able to launch into the gospel by leveraging their worldview. That's, in essence, that's the model. Has it converted anybody? Not that we know of, but my goodness, we've had fantastic conversations. Some of those are repeat conversations and friendships that still continue. Just yesterday, I was Facebooking with a friend who I developed at my time at the 2018 burn. It's an ongoing thing. And yes, we're gifting. So I gift copies of my book because why not?
Water.
Water.
10 principles.
Yep. We're gifting, and people are giving stuff to us as well. And so you're looking for those opportunities to have.
You're an ambassador.
That's right. Bingo.
And there's a lot of people very open there, you know. I mean, I had an amazing experience at the temple when I had a chance to share with a girl, because that's a place of sorrow, a place of kind of healing. It's their instrument of healing. And, you know, she was there crying, and I had an opportunity to talk to her. And I said, so what did you lose? What people do is they'll put names of relatives they've lost. They'll write them on the walls at temple, or they'll bring their child's toy that, you know, in the previous year since the previous burn died, and they'll put their favorite toy there, and you know, whatever, a picture of their grandfather just died. And when the temple burns, these items are consumed in the flames, and they kind of make that mental kind of break. They kind of have the healing when, you know, they're immolated and gone. They have that kind of mental break. Like, now that part's gone, I can move on. It's like a symbolism. Like the Japanese burning boats, they light those little fires in the paper boats and send them down the water. They kind of have that mental thing. But this poor girl was there and crying. And I said, well, what was your loss? And she goes, I'm like 22 years old. I just found out I had cancer. And she was there in her own spiritual way trying to cope with it. And I had an opportunity to share with her. I said, listen, I said, you know, there is a God who loves you. This is the worldview of Burning Man is kind of like New Age paganism. There's like an impersonal, you know, God monism, oneness. But there is a God who loves you, who cares about someone you could talk to, who created you. And, you know, it was a real good chance to share. So people are there searching, and you can do it whether in the temple or in the playa, because you're going there kind of like a giant cafeteria of spirituality and experiences where you can actually have a chance to be an ambassador and bring the love of Christ onto the playa.
Yeah.
You know, that's really important if you're going to do this kind of a missionary outreach. The first Parliament of World Religions I attended was in 1993. It was the second parliament that they had. I wasn't at the first one because I'm just not that old. That was 1893.
They didn't have religion back then.
Yeah. So, but an important thing to me is as I was approaching the event, physically walking there, we had a whole group outside with bullhorns, repent, you're going to burn in hell, those kinds of things. Now, I've been thinking about that a lot in recent years. I'm not saying they're right or wrong. I want to suggest something, kind of float this out here and see what your view is on this. The John the Baptist kind of speech, it seems to me, was done to the Jewish community. In other words, those who lived within the household of faith but were rejecting the faith, versus the Pauline-esque type of going outside the household of faith, and he engaged them in conversation about this God that they didn't know about. And he
That's excellent, Don. Excellent. Right? Very fitting here. Excellent insight.
Right. So it's right. So it seems to me that there's two, but the one that is the more repent is inside the unfaithful house of faith versus the bigger world where they don't even claim to believe in the true God.
There's a time and a place.
Yeah, time and a place.
And Carl's often said, you know, he's told me for years he fears that ever happening outside of Burning Man, right?
Yep. Yeah.
The worst testimony.
That's right. The last thing we want is people there with placards and bullhorns outside the event, and just simply reinforcing the negative.
I think that's why they had it in the desert, because they know that Westboro Baptist is never going to show up there.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. But you know, that raises a really good point. How do we treat the pagan world? How do we engage in the pagan world? 2 years ago, I was at Paganicon in Minneapolis, a large gathering of witches and Wiccas. And I went to one of the workshops hosted by a Satanist, and it was the first time they had brought in a Satanist to have a joint lecture or joint workshop within the pagan community. And I was listening to the conversation between the Satanists and some witches before the workshop began, and they were talking about Christian responses to them and how they had been called every nasty thing imaginable. And the Satanist talked about how when one person, a so-called Christian, found out she was a Satanist, had walked across the parking lot, grabbed the bag of garbage out of the can, walked over and threw all the garbage on her. And you know, when I hear things, and I've had to encounter this a lot. People come right to my office to talk about, you don't go. You shouldn't be going to these things. I mean, they're burning anyways. There's a mentality where we write them off. I am so glad Christ doesn't write us off.
Right.
It's only by His grace we're not a burner ourselves.
You know, I think
never forget that.
I think it's more than they write them off. I think they feel threatened. I think you know, they see what we see coming, and for us, we say, okay, this is the next step in God's providential plan. He knew this was coming from eternity past. He's ready for it. Whatever we have to go through, we have to go through. But for a lot of Christians, they don't see it that way. For them, it's like, wait a minute, I had this really nice Christian environment where I had this supposedly Christian culture and all that, and you're taking it away from me, and I'm mad. I'm angry.
Yeah. Well, this conversation is a good starting point.
There is part of that. Now, just to kind of pick up on something that Carl just said, in 1993, when we went to the Parliament of World Religions, Joy and I went, we had no idea what to expect. We had been pretty evangelistic, but obviously dealing with cults primarily, and had done some reading on, Mike Warnke was kind of the big guy earlier than that, on all things Satan, and a lot of ministries were modeled after his book, which turned out to be a total fraud.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So while we were there, we engaged with two of the Wiccan groups, the bigger one and the more popular one. The more popular one is the Fellowship of Isis, founded by Lady Olivia. She's passed away now. Who really, if I showed you a picture, she looks like the stereotypical crone, except she didn't have a boil on her nose. Otherwise, she fit the package perfectly. And she just fell in love with Joy and I. Everywhere we went, she would want to, can we have lunch? Can we talk? We interviewed her for probably 45 minutes. Delightful interview. How did you get involved? And she explained it all to us. She wasn't overtly rejecting Christianity, although she was actually doing that. She just didn't realize it. And they were the more popular group because their Wiccan priestesses all dressed quite scantily. And so you could always tell where they were because all the guys in place were like following them through down the aisles. The other group was the Covenant of Goddess, the larger of the two groups. We talked with Donald Frew, who was a PR guy there, for probably an hour and a half. And many of the things he said, we affirmed. Satan seller. Mike Warnke was a fraud. We talked about false accusations about the Temple of Set and other sorts of things. And he was surprised. It was Bill Hunsberger, who you guys know, and myself and several others. He was surprised that we understood it. And we talked in depth about the Christian faith, at the end of which he said, if I thought Christianity is what you are, what you believe about it is true, I would become a Christian. But
Don has been open to Christian dialogue.
He is. He says, I have had too much experience with Christians who are not what you are. They are evil, they are liars, and they do not represent what we believe in a factual way. That's hard when you look at the church and go,
Don, anybody, listen, it's bad enough to go out to the playa to eat that, dusty food and, get playa foot with all your dried out feet and, all the stuff you got to go through, waiting 8-hour lines for the Exodus or to get in at the gate. All that's bad enough. But to go there out of love for people, that's a whole different thing, right? So if you have what it takes to go out to love on people enough to minister there, I think hopefully that's the decent people, can be a testimony there. So I think it's pretty cool. Let me just say a quickie word on paganism, because we kind of mentioned that a couple of times. So when we talk about paganism, we're talking kind of like capital P paganism, not like unevangelized, like you're a pagan. We're talking about the kind of earth religion, the spirituality. The academic Graham Harvey, no relation to Larry Harvey, who founded Burning Man, he would call it a polytheistic, pantheistic earth religion. So they're involved in seasonal cycles and harvest, the moon, fertility, that kind of stuff, like deities. That's what we mean. So within the umbrella of paganism, capital P, we're talking Wicca, neo-paganism, Druidism, shamanism, heathenism, and Burning Man in its kind of proclivity to kind of, nothing's codified and dogmatically spelled out in Burning Man, but that has kind of got that flavor, that kind of feel for paganism where it kind of gravitates toward that kind of earth religion and connection to nature and that kind of thing, the environment. As a spirituality, feminine spirituality, all that whole kind of ball of wax.
Okay.
Yep. And Ron, to your point, and I see one of the comments in the chat that yes, it can be a miserable place physically, and some people are wired to handle that in different ways. I personally, unlike yourself, Steve or Ron, I actually enjoy that.
Look where you live. You live in how cold is it today, Carl?
You have to thaw out at least. You have to thaw out at least once a year.
Right.
It's like 20 below where you live right now.
I saw your snowdrift this morning. I went.
Yeah, we got a blizzard going on right now.
Carl's a natural survivor. He survives 6 months a year.
Yeah. Well, he's freeze dried up there in Canada.
Many are cold, but few are frozen.
Right. And what is the daytime high? What are we talking about in terms of daytime highs at Burning Man? 100 degrees, 105?
Oh, yeah.
105.
Yeah. But it's a dry heat, right? Just
you can dehydrate real fast. You have to keep,
my oven is a dry heat. I don't get in there either.
Yeah, the first time I stepped out of my vehicle in 2017 in the lineup, the entrance in, I stepped out and I'm like, Carl, you are an idiot. This is way hotter than anything that.
What am I doing here?
Exactly. Just the heat of it. But by about day 3 or so, I was pretty acclimated to it.
So for people who sleep in the daytime, I mean, how do you do that? He said some people.
Yeah, Vamp Camp and some of those, but you kind of want to experience it. You don't want to miss out. I mean, that's when all the other theme camps are doing things. They have an annual theme every year, and a lot of the camps are fashioned after the annual theme that Burning Man designates. But let's say one thing, Carl. Why don't you mention? We haven't mentioned this for the last 2 years under COVID. The event's gone virtual instead of on the playa.
Yes,
important to mention this.
Yeah. It has created for 2020 and then 2021, they did hold a very well-made, well-constructed virtual experience. Actually, a number of virtual experiences.
Different worlds.
Did that enhance their outreach? Did that cause it to?
Oh yeah. Now it doesn't. It's not capped to the 80,000. Anybody can go and participate in that Burning Man culture. And now I think it's going to become an ongoing event where, if Burning Man comes back in 2022, if COVID's gone, we're going to have two Burning Men, a physical one and a virtual one. Yep. They burn the man virtually. You have different theme camps, right, Carl? You've been very involved in that.
Yeah, I have.
So who's the? I mean, does it require funding beyond what the participants can supply? Is there somebody else? Is there a sugar daddy here who's paying the big bills?
There are some sugar daddies. The Burning Man organization a few years ago purchased a large ranch, and I believe they had 11 contributors who funded the purchasing of this property. And I don't know who the 11 funders were. They were outside the organization. I know they were from within Silicon Valley, within the West Coast culture, and the funding was significant.
Well, there's some heavy hitters, like I just explained. A lot of the billionaire club, plus, there's a billionaire who's been on the Burning Man Project's board as well.
Yeah,
at least one. I think maybe two.
Yeah.
So we're really out of time, but I want to ask a question. It just popped into my brain because it's something Carl and I talk about pretty often. How much is now it's gone from my brain.
The ticket to get in?
No, Rothblatt. I'm trying to think. Transhumanism. Is there a transhumanism camp there?
There's themes that kind of correspond with that. Like, so for example, in 2018, the theme that year was iRobot. And so the art pieces, a lot of the discussions centered around those questions of can man and machine merge? What is the difference between humanity and our technology? So I've gone to a lot of workshops kind of built around those transhumanist questions. And you have some people who intersect with that worldview who are attending. There's no question. But it is a melting pot of everything under the sun that way.
It's many cultures come together to form Burning Man. It's rave culture, punk culture, gay culture, witchcraft culture, transhuman culture, shaman culture. There's a lot of yoga, tantra, shamanism on there. Cult groups, occult groups. There's all kinds of different cultures that come together to form Burning Man culture.
What is the entrance fee?
Well, this year I think it's $675 or $625 for the main.
It's gone up.
Yeah, for the main tickets, and then if you want your FOMO tickets, which are on sale right now, for those who can afford it, it's I think between $1,500 to $2,500 a ticket.
And they're $50 to park your vehicle.
Way more than $50, Steve.
I thought 50 this year. Oh no, it went up. That's right.
Yeah, when this year I think
right. We just talked about that.
150 to 175.
Yeah, we just talked about that. Yep. Yeah.
Park your vehicle.
It used to be 50 for the longest time.
Yeah, no, it's expensive.
Yeah,
so it's not a cheap endeavor.
It's a multi-million-dollar project,
and you have to commit yourself. If you're going to go, you have to commit yourself to doing it.
Right. So
it's a fascinating event. I mean, you can see YouTube videos of some of the artwork and stuff. But
they do have sales from time to time, but you got to kind of be aware of when they are, right, for tickets.
Yes, that's right. And even getting the tickets themselves has been
fiascos.
Crazy, fiascos. Just
do they have scalpers standing outside?
No.
But there is. But Ron, that's a good question or a good point. The scamming community. There's a lot of scammers, a lot, and I've helped in some of that with a few of my Burning Man connections to try to steer people away from some of the obvious scams, because I don't care who you are, if you're Christian or not Christian, nobody wants to get scammed.
Right.
I mean, when it sells out, tickets go on sale on eBay and Craigslist like for $1,400-$1,500. These people just can't miss their burn. It's like they look forward all year towards this. They build their art for a year to be able to go. They wait to take their, their prized things to the temple for that healing. So this is a big event to come home, and they, now that it sells out, you got to get a ticket, you got to get in, and they're willing to pay many times face value to get in, even though it's kind of against Burning Man principles to even do that.
Yeah, okay. Well, we are going to have to wrap it up for today. We will come back and visit this at some future date. I think it's an important one. Christians need to know what the culture is doing out there, and it is a microcosm of the planet that you're looking at there.
Yeah.
Even more than the Parliament of World Religions, because there's every kind of belief system available in one location, and a few Christians are there and are generally accepted, but there's certain behaviors required. So, and with that, Ron, would you Waltz us out of here.
Yeah, waltzing Matilda. Here we go. Let's give credit to whom credit is due. Our resident cult leader profiler is Neil before me. Our wardrobe manager is See How It Fits You. Culinary services are provided by Chef Ham and Cheese. Our tinfoil hat provisioner is Just In Case. Jehovah's Witnesses coverage comes from Armageddon and The Opposer. Our Mormon Archives manager is Polly Dummas. Our Liberal Denominations bureau chief is Lucy Goosey. Transgender issues coverage comes from Ben Hur, our special correspondent for cults based on the Hindenburg disaster and flying turkeys. OD Humanity. Our fact-checking supervisor is Oleg Pulling. Technical assistance comes from Rookie Research. Legal advisors at the law firm of Dewey Cheatham Howe. Our grievance resolution director is Giovanna Pisami. Our director of privacy assurance is Wiretapping. And original idea sourcing comes from Drew A. Blank. The Unknown Webcast is a production of Midwest Christian Outreach, Inc. in cooperation with Emergency Manicure Productions, both of whom are solely responsible for this content, although you will never, ever be able to prove that in a court of law.
Never happen.
Will never happen.
Never.
Thank you, Steve and Carl.
Okay, now we all engage in a royal wave.